The loss of the inner light. It was a cold morning, and Lucas woke up once again with the weight of the world on his shoulders. The soft light that came through the window seemed unable to warm his heart. He felt empty, without direction, as if he were in an endless tunnel, where there was neither hope nor answers. The days he had been waiting for dragged on, all the same, without meaning, and he found himself increasingly distant from everything he had once loved. The brightness that had once filled his life now seemed extinguished, lost in a thick fog of doubts and disappointments. The loss that Lucas had faced years ago still haunted him. His mother's death was such a deep blow that he never figured out how to deal with the pain. He tried to be strong, for others, for himself, but with each passing day, he felt as if he was sinking deeper and deeper into an endless abyss. He had lost his faith, his hope and, above all, the desire to fight for something greater. His friends told him that he would necessarily move on, but how could he move on when the path ahead seemed covered by a blanket of shadows? Lucas sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if he were waiting for the answers to appear there, in front of him. But what he felt was a great doubt. The emptiness in his chest was so deep that no word, no gesture, seemed to be able to fill it. He felt like an empty waterfall, wandering without purpose, with a lump in his throat that he could not release. Each day seemed harder, and he did not know how to continue. He tried to distract himself, to get involved with work, with daily tasks, but nothing seemed to help him push away the pain. Conversations with others became superficial, without depth. There was nothing that could truly touch his soul, nothing that made him feel alive again. He missed the light that once radiated from within him, that flame that made him believe in something greater, in something beautiful. Now, that light seemed to have gone out, and he didn't know how to rekindle it. That day, Lucas let himself remain silent for longer than usual. He looked out the window, watching the trees sway gently in the wind, but nothing seemed real. The city around him was moving, people coming and going, but he felt disconnected, as if he were outside his own body, watching life pass by from afar. He wanted to scream, but he couldn't. He wanted to cry, but he didn't know how. It was at this point of despair that Lucas began to realize that something needed to change. But he didn't know what, or how to take the first step. He felt an internal resistance, a voice in his mind that told him it was better to continue the way he was, to not expect anything anymore, to not seek anything anymore. But there was another voice, a softer voice, that whispered that there was still time, that there was still something waiting for him, something he couldn't yet understand. That afternoon, as he walked through the deserted streets, a strange sensation took over his body. Something made him feel watched, as if someone was by his side, even though he couldn't see anyone. He looked around, but there was no one around. He just had the feeling that something was about to happen. Lucas couldn't explain it, but there was a presence in the air, an energy that surrounded him without him understanding it. He stopped in the middle of the street, taking a deep breath, trying to understand what was happening. It was then that he heard a soft voice, which seemed to come from within him, but also from outside, like a whisper straight to his soul. The voice didn't scare him. On the contrary, it brought a feeling of welcome and comfort. He looked back, trying to understand where it was coming from, but the street was empty. It was as if the voice was echoing in his mind, but with an explanation he had never had before. "Don't be afraid, Lucas," the voice said, soft and reassuring. "I'm here to guide you, to show you the way." Lucas stood still, his heart beating faster, his mind trying to process what he had just heard. He didn't know what was happening, but there was something deeply comforting in those words. Something that touched his soul in a way he couldn't describe. He closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the feeling he couldn't explain, but that now made him feel, for the first time in a long time, less alone. A continuous voice, softer now, like a distant but clear melody. "You are not alone, Lucas. Even in the darkest moments, there is a light waiting to shine again. You just have to believe. I will be with you, whenever you need me." For a moment, Lucas didn't know what to do. He was confused, stunned by the experience, but something inside him, something deep inside, told him that this wasn't just his imagination. There was something real in that presence, something divine, that he could not fully understand, but that was already beginning to change the way he saw the world. He did not know what would happen next, but in that moment, something awakened inside him. He felt that there was, indeed, something more, something waiting for him, something beyond the pain and emptiness he carried inside. With a lighter heart, Lucas took the first step towards something unknown, but now with a sense of hope that he had not felt for a long time. He knew that his journey was just beginning, but for the first time, he was ready to take the next step. Something told him that, even in his darkness, there was a light waiting to be found again. The arrival of the angel of forgiveness. In the following days, Lucas could not get the experience he had lived out of his head. The voice, soft and comforting, echoed in his mind at every moment, like a constant reminder of something that he could not fully understand, but that he could no longer ignore. He knew something was happening, something beyond his control. But what was it? And what was that mysterious voice doing that seemed to be calling him? He tried to return to his routine, but something inside him had changed. The colors were more intense, the sounds clearer, but at the same time, the emptiness he felt was still there, a persistent sensation that did not dissipate easily. He felt more aware than before, more attentive to the details around him, but still lost, as if he were on the edge of something, but without knowing what. One night, while sleeping, Lucas had a vivid dream. He was in a vast field of flowers, or it was fresh and the soft light of the moon illuminated everything around him. He walked aimlessly, lost in thought, when suddenly a figure appeared in front of him. It was a woman with an ethereal appearance, with an aura of golden light surrounding her. Her face was serene, and her eyes were deep, transmitting a peace that Lucas had never experienced. The woman gently and calmly extended her hand to him. "Do not be afraid, Lucas," she said, her voice like a soft melody. "I am the angel of forgiveness. I am here to help you heal the wounds that you carry in your soul." Lucas could not believe what she was selling. The image of the woman seemed so real, so tangible, that he felt he was not just dreaming. He was in a state of profound stillness, as if he were on another plane of existence, where pain and suffering had no power. He looked to the woman, searching for answers, but nothing seemed more important than that moment of connection. "You carry a deep pain, Lucas," the angel of forgiveness continued, "a pain that prevents you from moving forward, that prevents you from finding peace. But I am here to help you release that weight. Forgiveness is not just for others, it is also for you." Those words penetrated his heart with a clarity he never imagined possible. He knew deep down that the pain he carried was not just from the loss of his mother. He had worried about not having done more, not having said more, not having shown more love while she was there, by his side. He carried the guilt like an invisible burden, a shadow that followed him in every step, in every thought. He asked himself to forgive himself, but what could he do? "Forgiveness is not forgetting, Lucas," the angel said, as if reading his thoughts. "Forgiveness is letting go. Letting go of the weight of the past. When you forgive yourself, you open yourself up to healing and transformation. You begin to live again, to breathe again." Lucas felt a wave of emotions take over his body. His heart was beating faster. Tears were beginning to come, but he didn't stop them. For the first time in a long time, he felt the lightness of being able to surrender to what he was feeling. He no longer had to carry the guilt. He no longer had to carry the pain. "But how can I do that?" he asked, his voice low and full of doubt. "How can I forgive myself for everything I've done or failed to do?" The angel of forgiveness shines gently. Forgiveness doesn't require you to do anything. It only requires you to allow. Allow yourself to be healed. Release the weight of the past, the memories that hold you back. Accept that you did the best you could, with what you knew and with what you felt. The only thing left now is to move on. Lucas fell silent, absorbing the angel's words, and for a moment, the field around him seemed to glow with a golden light, as if all of nature around him were aligning with that moment of revelation. He closed his eyes, feeling peace and calm invade his being. Perhaps, finally, it would be possible to find the freedom he had been searching for. When he opened his eyes again, the angel had disappeared, but Lucas felt its presence within him, like a burning flame that would not be easily extinguished. He awoke from the dream with a sense of clarity. It was not just an illusion, it was real. Something inside him had changed. In the days that followed, Lucas began to reflect deeply on what the angel of forgiveness had told him. He felt that, for the first time in a long time, he was ready to face his fears and guilt. He began to write, putting his feelings into words, trying to understand why he felt lost, trying to find the path to healing. He saw that the key was forgiveness, not just forgiveness of others, but also forgiveness of himself. One afternoon, while walking through a park, Lucas came across a group of people gathered around a bench. An elderly woman was there, smiling kindly, and around her were some children, playing and laughing. Lucas moved and, without knowing why, began to talk to the woman. She told stories from her life, of moments of suffering and loss, but also of how she found peace through forgiveness. "Forgiveness is like breathing, my dear," she said with a serene smile. "When you don't forgive, you carry the air, but when you forgive, you let it out and breathe freely. Forgiveness is the key to living in peace." Lucas felt a profound rupture, as if everything began to make sense. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, he believed that healing was possible. He needed to let go of the past, forgive himself, and move on. And in doing so, he would begin to find the light again. The journey of forgiveness. In the days that followed, Lucas began to indulge in the process of reflection. The weight of guilt still followed him, but now, with the presence of the angel of forgiveness in his life, he felt more prepared to face what had previously seemed unbearable. At first, the process seemed simple: let go of the accusations, accept forgiveness, and move on. But as he got deeper into his journey, Lucas began to realize that forgiveness, like healing, was not a linear process. It was an emotional roller coaster. In his first real attempt to forgive himself, Lucas found himself in front of an old photograph of his mother. It was a picture of the two of them together, smiling, on a random day in his childhood. The memories came rushing back, bringing with them a mixture of longing, guilt, and love. His throat felt tight, as if the weight of regret was suffocating him. He remembered the words of the angel, who had told him to let go of the pain, but how could he do that when the pain felt like a part of who he was? In that moment, he realized that forgiveness was not just an act of will, but an internal process of dwelling, something that took time. He should not rush his healing. Slowly, he began to allow forgiveness to settle within him, not suddenly, but like a seed planted in his heart. With each moment of pain, he began to respond with patience. For each painful memory, he would say, "I did the best I could." One sunny day, Lucas decided to walk to the beach. The sound of the waves, the smell of the sea, and the gentle breeze that caressed his face made him feel closer to something greater. It was as if, being there, he was in tune with the universe, with the energy of life flowing around him. He sat down on the sand, looking at the horizon, and closed his eyes. The silence around him was comforting, but at the same time, it made him even more aware of the feelings that were bubbling up inside him. "You're doing this the right way, Lucas," said a soft, familiar voice that brought a smile to his heart. It was the voice of the angel of forgiveness. Lucas opened his eyes, but there was no one around him. The presence of the voice, however, was palpable, as if it were closer than ever. "I don't know what I'm doing," he answered quietly, as if the sea could hear his thoughts. "I feel lost. The pain won't go away, because you're not alone." Forgiveness isn't something you do in isolation. It happens when you share your pain with the world, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and when you let others help you. The journey of forgiveness is also the journey of love. The journey of reconciliation with all that is you. Lucas felt tears well up in his eyes. For the first time, he didn't stop himself. He let himself cry, not as a sign of weakness, but as an act of purification. The tears were no longer a symbol of uncontrollable pain, but of a silent transformation, a gradual release of what he needed to let go of. That afternoon, something inside Lucas began to change. He understood that forgiveness was not a destination, but a journey. It was not a simple act of saying it's okay, but an internal reconfiguration. He began to realize that by forgiving himself, he was giving permission for life to be renewed. Forgiveness was a path to liberation, not only for himself, but for all the people who had somehow crossed his path. However, the path of forgiveness was not just about himself. The journey also involved others. He knew that in order to heal the deepest wounds of his soul, he would need to forgive those who had hurt him, even though it was a difficult and challenging task. He didn't know exactly how he would do it, but something inside him told him that it was the next step. Perhaps the true healing lay in freeing others from their resentment, just as he would free himself by forgiving himself. In the days that followed, Lucas sought to talk to some people from whom he had distanced himself, for various reasons. He saw that the simple act of opening up, expressing his emotions and listening to the perspectives of others, began to heal not only his own wounds, but also those of those around him. He began to see forgiveness as a cycle, a current that flowed between people and brought them together rather than torn them apart. On Thursday afternoon, Lucas received an unexpected phone call. It was from his father, whom he had not spoken to in many years. His father's voice was hesitant, but he seemed determined to speak. "I know we have a lot of unresolved issues between us, Lucas," he said sincerely. I'm not good at apologizing, but I want to try. I know you carry a lot of pain from our separation, and I want you to know that I'm here. I want you to forgive me." His father's words fell like a gentle wave on his heart. Lucas felt a mix of emotions: surprise, brokenness, still a bit of anger, but also a sense of hope. He knew forgiveness wouldn't be an instant solution, but this was the beginning of a new chapter. Not just for him, but for their relationship. He accepted his father's words, and for the first time, he gave himself permission to believe that healing was possible, that perhaps the cycle of forgiveness was finally beginning. Lucas was silent for a moment, reflecting on his father's words and what they did. He knew that forgiveness was something that happened within him, not through words or outward gestures. It was a process, and perhaps he was more prepared to walk that path than he ever imagined. When he opened his eyes again, the angel had disappeared, but Lucas felt its presence within him, like a burning flame that would not be easily extinguished. He awoke from the dream with a sense of clarity. It was not just an illusion, it was real. Something inside him had changed. In the days that followed, Lucas began to reflect deeply on what the angel of forgiveness had told him. He felt that, for the first time in a long time, he was ready to face his fears and guilt. He began to write, putting his feelings into words, trying to understand why he felt lost, trying to find the path to healing. He saw that the key was forgiveness, not just forgiveness of others, but also forgiveness of himself. One afternoon, while walking through a park, Lucas came across a group of people gathered around a bench. An elderly woman was there, smiling kindly, and around her were some children, playing and laughing. Lucas moved and, without knowing why, began to talk to the woman. She told stories from her life, of moments of suffering and loss, but also of how she found peace through forgiveness. "Forgiveness is like breathing, my dear," she said with a serene smile. "When you don't forgive, you carry the air, but when you forgive, you let it out and breathe freely. Forgiveness is the key to living in peace." Lucas felt a profound rupture, as if everything began to make sense. He knew the path ahead would not be easy, but for the first time, he believed that healing was possible. He needed to let go of the past, forgive himself, and move on. And in doing so, he would begin to find the light again. The journey of forgiveness. In the days that followed, Lucas began to indulge in the process of reflection. The weight of guilt still followed him, but now, with the presence of the angel of forgiveness in his life, he felt more prepared to face what had previously seemed unbearable. At first, the process seemed simple: let go of the accusations, accept forgiveness, and move on. But as he got deeper into his journey, Lucas began to realize that forgiveness, like healing, was not a linear process. It was an emotional roller coaster. In his first real attempt to forgive himself, Lucas found himself in front of an old photograph of his mother. It was a picture of the two of them together, smiling, on a random day in his childhood. The memories came rushing back, bringing with them a mixture of longing, guilt, and love. His throat felt tight, as if the weight of regret was suffocating him. He remembered the words of the angel, who had told him to let go of the pain, but how could he do that when the pain felt like a part of who he was? In that moment, he realized that forgiveness was not just an act of will, but an internal process of dwelling, something that took time. He should not rush his healing. Slowly, he began to allow forgiveness to settle within him, not suddenly, but like a seed planted in his heart. With each moment of pain, he began to respond with patience. For each painful memory, he would say, "I did the best I could." One sunny day, Lucas decided to walk to the beach. The sound of the waves, the smell of the sea, and the gentle breeze that caressed his face made him feel closer to something greater. It was as if, being there, he was in tune with the universe, with the energy of life flowing around him. He sat down on the sand, looking at the horizon, and closed his eyes. The silence around him was comforting, but at the same time, it made him even more aware of the feelings that were bubbling up inside him. "You're doing this the right way, Lucas," said a soft, familiar voice that brought a smile to his heart. It was the voice of the angel of forgiveness. Lucas opened his eyes, but there was no one around him. The presence of the voice, however, was palpable, as if it were closer than ever. "I don't know what I'm doing," he answered quietly, as if the sea could hear his thoughts. "I feel lost. The pain won't go away. Because you're not alone. Forgiveness isn't something you do in isolation. It happens when you share your pain with the world, when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, and when you let others help you. The journey of forgiveness is also the journey of love. The journey of reconciliation with all that is you." Lucas felt tears well up in his eyes. For the first time, he didn't stop himself. He let himself cry, not as a sign of weakness, but as an act of purification. The tears were no longer a symbol of uncontrollable pain, but of a silent transformation, a gradual release of what he needed to let go of. That afternoon, something inside Lucas began to change. He understood that forgiveness was not a destination, but a journey. It was not a simple act of saying it's okay, but an internal reconfiguration. As Lucas relives these memories, he realizes that many of his choices in the present were actually a reflection of his unhealed wounds. He was afraid of repeating his parents' mistakes, but at the same time, he was afraid to allow forgiveness to take hold fully, as if that meant forgetting the suffering that had shaped him. It was then that he felt the presence of the angel of forgiveness more strongly than ever. The angel was there, by his side, as he always had been, offering him support, but this time in a more intense way. Lucas looked around, but did not see the angel physically. However, the warmth and light that filled the room told him that the heavenly presence was there, supporting him. "You are ready to face your past, Lucas," the angel's soft voice said. "I know that what you feel right now is difficult, but remember, forgiveness does not erase memories, it simply frees you from them. Forgiveness is not about forgetting, but about letting go of the pain." Lucas looked at the photograph once more. He had no decision point. He could either carry on with the weight of anger and guilt, or he could choose to let go, even if it meant accepting the flaws that had defined him up until that moment. He knew the process would not be easy, but he was determined to take the next step. "I don't know how to do this," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to let it all go." "It's not about knowing everything now," the angel replied, with a calmness that seemed to touch Lucas's soul. "It's about trusting that by allowing yourself to be vulnerable, you are making room for healing. Every step you take toward forgiveness is a step toward freedom." That moment of revelation was profound. Lucas felt a wave of understanding come over him. Forgiveness, after all, was not about being perfect, but about allowing yourself to fail and still move forward. It was not about acknowledging the mistakes of the past, but about accepting that the past had shaped him, and now he had the power to shape the future. In the weeks that followed, Lucas continued his journey of self-discovery, beginning to establish deeper connections with others and with himself. He began to realize that forgiveness was not just about releasing resentment, but also about giving himself permission to be imperfect. It was an ongoing process of healing, which involved acknowledging his flaws and having the courage to change. In a meeting with his therapist, he reflected on his reflections on what he was experiencing. She looked at him with empathy and said, "Lucas, you are going through one of the most difficult but also most powerful processes in life. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It is deciding that you no longer want to carry the weight of anger. That is freedom. That is healing." Lucas conveyed, feeling lighter than before. He knew that the journey was far from over, but he also knew that each day he was closer to finding inner peace. Forgiveness was not something that happened all at once, but something he chose continually, with each new step. The reflections of healing. After confronting his past and reliving such profound memories, Lucas began to feel a new kind of lightness. It was subtle, as if a part of the burden he had been carrying for so long had finally begun to dissipate. But the healing process still challenged him. The scars were there, even with the presence of the angel giving him strength and advice. Lucas now understood that forgiveness was less about others and more about freeing himself. During a solitary walk on a sunny morning, he felt the world around him with a clarity he had not noticed before. The trees, the sounds of the birds and the touch of the wind on his face were part of a new beginning. This moment, as ordinary as it was, represented a crucial step in his journey. It was as if he was rediscovering the simple things, feeling more present, more connected to himself and the universe. As he reflected, Lucas noticed that the changes within him also affected his relationships. When interacting with people close to him, he felt a renewed sense of belonging. Where once there had been judgment and expectations, he could now listen with greater empathy, as if the wounds he had carried himself had opened a path to understanding the pain of others. The change was subtle but powerful, and it seemed to come from the same place the angel had spoken of so many times: the ability to forgive and move on. At a family dinner, Lucas found himself laughing and sharing genuine moments of joy with relatives he had previously viewed from a distance. The hurt that had once dominated his thoughts was no longer so present, and he saw that part of his journey was to create memories that would replace the shadows of the past. He finally understood that forgiveness also involved embracing the present and allowing himself to live fully. The angel of forgiveness visited him again that night, emanating a serene and welcoming presence. The heavenly figure looked at him with an expression of approval, and Lucas felt an indescribable peace. "You are learning, Lucas," the angel said in his gentle voice. "The forgiveness we offer to the world is a reflection of the peace we allow within ourselves." Lucas communicated. He knew he still had a long way to go, but as he experienced this momentary peace, he felt grateful for each step he had taken. He was not completely healed, but he was at peace with the process, understanding that healing was, above all, an ongoing journey. Trials of the past. Lucas was getting used to the peace that the angel's recent lessons had brought him. However, an unexpected test arose. One day, while visiting a coffee shop, Lucas met Clara, an old friend who had been part of his difficult past. The two looked at each other, and time seemed to stop. Painful memories returned with intensity, and he survived that, despite his advances, old wounds had not yet fully healed. Clara also seemed tense, as if the reunion would bring up long-buried emotions. They exchanged few words, but the tension was not palpable. Lucas knew that the angel's presence was guiding him, but that encounter brought to the surface old hurts and resentments, testing his commitment to forgiveness. He felt a familiar anger, the desire to revive arguments and bring up old resentments, but he resisted. The angel of forgiveness appeared at night, noticing Lucas's restlessness. "This test is essential," the angel explained, his serene presence dispelling the weight Lucas was carrying. Forgiving the past means facing these situations without allowing them to steal your peace. With the angel's guidance, Lucas decided to meet Clara again, but this time with a different approach. Instead of dwelling on the past, he would choose to listen and understand what the reunion had to teach him. When he returned, Clara spoke of her own difficulties and the impact that certain choices had had on her life. Lucas, listening with an open heart, realized that, just like him, she had also faced her own struggles and complaints. At the end of the meeting, Lucas felt that an invisible barrier had been removed. The connection between them, previously stained by pain, now seemed lighter. He understood that forgiving also meant understanding the humanity of the other, confirming that everyone is capable of failing and regretting. This reunion, although difficult, brought Lucas a new peace. He felt that, by forgiving Clara, he was closer to forgiving himself as well. Encountering the inner shadow. After meeting Clara again, Lucas remembered the most hidden parts of himself. The path of forgiveness revealed not only his past hurts, but also his own flaws, insecurities, and fears. That night, in a moment of introspection, the angel of forgiveness appeared once again, with an unexpected message. "Forgiving others is part of the journey," the angel said, with profound calm. "But the real journey happens when we face the shadows we carry within ourselves." These words resonated deeply. Lucas saw that, despite his progress, he still harbored a certain anger, guilt for his own choices and shame for what he had become in moments of weakness. He knew that, in order to move forward, he would necessarily have to face these shadows and accept that even the very parts of himself that he avoided could be transformed. In an attempt to seek clarity, he decided to spend the night in silence, without distractions, confronting each memory and repressed emotion. The first few hours were intense, with uncomfortable memories flooding his mind. He saw moments of anger, situations in which they had been late for others, and words they had said in the midst of despair. Each memory was a window into a part of himself that he had tried to avoid, but that now, with renewed courage, he faced head-on. Lucas felt the weight of responsibility and, at the same time, a sincere desire to reconcile with himself. He understood that true forgiveness offers these parts, and offers himself the same compassion that he had learned to give to others. Late in the night, the angel of forgiveness returned. "Accepting your shadow is an act of love," the angel whispered, the light enveloping Lucas like a gentle embrace. "Only when we accept who we are, whole, can we completely free ourselves." Lucas, with a sigh of relief, remembered that forgiveness was as close as he had imagined. It was, after all, a process of accepting everything he was, including his weaknesses and mistakes. With this understanding, he began to see his own journey from a new, deeper, and more transformative perspective. Healing through forgiveness. As his self-forgiveness deepened, Lucas began to feel a weight lifting. He noticed small changes in his daily life. The anxieties that once tormented him, the memories that once brought him pain, now seemed to fade away. The presence of the angel by his side became less frequent, almost as if guiding him to move forward alone. One quiet afternoon, Lucas received an unexpected invitation, a family gathering, organized by a distant cousin. His first reaction was one of hesitation. He had distanced himself from his relatives, partly because of old hurts and resentments that he still harbored. But as Lucas reflected on the path of forgiveness he had been on, he felt that this meeting could be an opportunity for true healing. On the day of the meeting, he arrived at the venue with his heart racing. Every familiar face he saw brought back memories, some good, some filled with pain. He felt the urge to avoid certain people, to hide behind small talk, but this time he decided to do something different. Inspired by the journey he had experienced with the angel, he chose to open his heart and speak honestly with those he had moved away from. During a conversation with his uncle, who had been an authoritarian figure in his youth, Lucas spoke about the difficulties that had arisen and the scars that certain situations had left. To his surprise, his uncle was also incidental and vulnerable in a way that Lucas had never realized before. It was a moment of mutual understanding that dissolved years of emotional distance between them. At the end of the meeting, Lucas felt renewed. The journey of forgiveness had led him to heal old wounds and build bridges that he had thought would never be seen again. In a final moment of reflection, he looked up at the sky, as if expecting to see the angel again. But this time, he felt that the angel was within him, a constant presence of peace and accessibility. The light of complete forgiveness. After the family meeting, Lucas discovered that his journey with forgiveness had taken on a new meaning. He felt a peace he had never experienced before, as if he had finally released all the ties that bound him to the past. However, there was still one last step he had to overcome, completely forgiving himself for his own failures and letting go of the old guilt and regrets that still haunted him. One silent night, Lucas decided to do a kind of personal ritual to mark the end of this journey. He chose a special place in nature, where he could be at peace and reflect. The sky was clear, and the stars shone brighter, as if the entire universe were present to witness this moment. Lucas closed his eyes and, in a low voice, began to list all the failures he still carried within himself. He spoke about the impulsive choices, the moments of weakness, the mistakes that had caused pain to himself and others. Each word he spoke was accompanied by a feeling of lightness, as if he were emptying his heart of a weight that had been carried for a long time. Suddenly, he felt a presence at his side. When he opened his eyes, he saw that the angel of forgiveness was there again, but this time, not as a distant guide, but as an extension of his own consciousness. The angel sent and, in a suggestion, said, "You are your own guide, Lucas. Forgiving is accepting that we are imperfect and that we can always start over." Lucas felt a wave of warmth run through his body. He knew that the angel's presence was real, but it was also something that now lived in his heart. He understood that the journey of forgiveness was continuous, and that, whenever there was a need, this strength would be within him, to guide and strengthen him. At that moment, he forgave himself completely. All the hurts, guilt and regrets were released like smoke dissipating into the air. Lucas felt free, as if he had been reborn, with a new perspective on life. With one last look at the sky, he breathed in gratitude, knowing that his life would take a new direction from Dali onwards. He was finally ready to move on, with a light heart and a peaceful soul. The illuminated path. Months after that transformative moment, Lucas's life had taken a turn he never imagined possible. Now at peace with himself and with others, he found new ways to express his gratitude for life, cultivating healthy relationships and seeking inspiration in every little detail of daily life. The people around him noticed the change, and many sought him out for advice, attracted by the serenity and confidence he now radiated. Over time, Lucas decided to share his experience. He began to write about a journey he had lived, narrating the internal battles, the path of forgiveness, and the lessons he learned from the angel of forgiveness. His story, told with sincerity and vulnerability, touched the hearts of many people, showing that forgiveness is not just an act towards others, but a profound liberation that begins within oneself. One summer afternoon, While reviewing his notes for a new chapter of the book, Lucas felt that familiar warm presence again. Although the angel of forgiveness did not manifest itself physically, Lucas knew that the spirit of the angel continued to guide him, like an invisible friend who was now part of his very essence. As he concludes his book, Lucas shows that his purpose goes beyond his own healing. He has a new goal: to inspire others to seek forgiveness in their lives, to free themselves from emotional burdens, and to recognize that everyone has the ability to start over, regardless of what they have experienced. And it was in this new purpose that he found meaning, a mission that would allow him to move forward with joy and gratitude. The epilogue closes the narrative with a tone of continuity and expansion, representing the lasting impact of forgiveness in Lucas's life and his mission to share this message with the world. As he finishes his book, Lucas shows that his purpose goes beyond his own healing. He has a new goal: to inspire others to seek forgiveness in their lives, to free themselves from emotional burdens, and to consider that everyone has the ability to start over, regardless of what they have experienced. And it was in this new purpose that he found meaning, a mission that would make him move forward with joy and gratitude. The epilogue closes the narrative with a tone of continuity and expansion, representing the lasting impact of forgiveness in Lucas's life and the mission to share this message with the world. Thank you very much for following this message until the end. The path of forgiveness is a profound journey, and your presence here shows that you are seeking growth and transformation. If this message is sent to you, confirm the collection by commenting the number 333 below, a sign that you are in alignment with the energies of the angels. Take advantage and join our angelic community. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any divine messages. Stay tuned for the next messages from the angels, which will bring even more guidance and inspiration for your life. Your journey is unique, and we are here to accompany you on it. Until the next video, may the light of the angels continue to guide your steps.